2 days after I wrote the script to this video, Sons of the Forest released a surprise update, bringing in rafts amongst various other features. The response to this was varied, with some grateful and humble, and others...
Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man? Get your ass!
Not so much. I think in order to properly explain and rate Sons of the Forest, you really have to understand the first game. I was going to make a video on Sons with a short introduction to the Forest, but though I tried to keep it short, I ended up writing over 20 pages. Sons is so contentious because of this cult love of the first game, and many seem to think that it is an unworthy sequel. But I argue it isn't. I think it's a great sequel, and if you disagree, just hear me out first. I'm going to attempt why the first game is so cherished, and I'm going to explain the story and lore of the Forest, with theories and discoveries included. Instead of doing the canonical, chronological storyline, I'm going to explain the pieces of the story as they're discovered throughout the game, so anyone who hasn't played or isn't a gamer can get an idea of how it works. I'm going to go into as much detail as I possibly can, so grab a drink and a snack, do your laundry or something, and settle in. I loved this first game, and it holds a very special place in my heart, because my brother and I played it together incessantly while I lived abroad. It was the perfect combination of story, atmosphere, and scares, and its multiplayer aspect made base building and collaboration really, really fun. My brother loves to lumberjack and to kill things, and I love a story told through environmental storytelling. The magic of the first game is its subtle storytelling. The game can be enjoyed to a huge extent without any of the story elements, making it perfect for gamers that want to focus on survival and combat aspects. However, for those willing to look, there was this wealth of lore and story found in notes, pictures, and set pieces in the world around you. They didn't make it easy on you either. The labyrinthian-style mazes of the cave systems hid elements in every terrifying nook and cranny. If you were a fan of survival horror, have not played this, and have not had the story spoiled on you, I could not recommend the game highly enough. Go play it, because I'm about to start spoiling shit in T-minus 10 seconds. You gone? Okay, good. I'm going to give a summary of the first game's plot for the purposes of this video, but there are inevitably things I'm going to miss, so forgive me for that. And I'm going to link to more in-depth videos you can check out if you're not satisfied. The game opens in a first-person perspective. You are sitting on a plane with your son. I have very little experience of kids, so I'm not certain what age he's supposed to be, but Reddit tells me it's around the age of 8. He is so cute, snuggled up against your arm with a toy robot in his other arm. In front of him are adorable drawings of his. Technically, if you don't move or pick anything up, you can continue in this limbo forever and assumedly land at your destination safely. However, that's not how a game works, so let's get a move on. For your first story item of the game, you see a survival book written by Eric LeBlanc and Sam Sounds, dedicated to Timmy. This establishes so much immediately. It's a fun way to make it make sense that you would be able to survive stranded on a desert island, and canonizes the building mechanics and tutorials into the game. I really love the fact that your son is holding onto your arm. That indicates that they have a close bond and he feels super comfortable with you. I love happy families. Once you've barely taken in the implications of these story elements, the plane starts to undergo sudden and violent turbulence. You try in vain to hold on to your son with a protective arm across his chest, while the entire fucking plane falls apart. This is why I could never be a parent, man. This is my worst nightmare. You lose consciousness, and you awaken just in time to see a horrifying man, covered in blood, snatching up your son and walking away with him. Walking. Like he hasn't got a care in the world. Like he knows that you can't stop him. Question is he right? You pass out again, only to wake in control of your faculties as the cutscene has ended. Jesus. Okay, so what do you do? The following gameplay is then a standard survival. You grab your first tool, a plane axe embedded in the body of your air hostess. You search through the destroyed plane and luggage for anything that could help you, finding a passenger manifest. You notice while doing this that your air hostess's body is the only body you can find. What happened to the rest of the passengers? Where the hell is your son and who took him? Opening your survival book, you'll see objectives and empty pages for notes. In your objectives, the first and foremost is find Timmy. Aha! So it can be presumed that you are one of the authors of the book, Eric or Sam. The game can take as long or as short as you like. Personally, I love to build a beautiful base before doing anything else, so I have a nice homestead to return to. Others may have several little bases across the island, and others might just try to bum rush the story without building a base at all. However you play, as you start to move through this world, you notice the locals. You'll hear sounds and growls in the underbrush of the forest and turn, only to be met with nothing. Then you'll see people peeking out of trees, hidden in the bushes, watching you. A great aspect of this game is the AI used in the enemies that changes depending on how you play. If you're an inexperienced player taking time to look around and test different things, they won't always outright attack you at first. Even if they fully emerge to look at you or threaten you, they're more scouting than they are attack parties. However, if you're an experienced player and start making moves like building structures or creating and wearing armor right off the bat, the locals will take that, maybe correctly, as a threat and be much more aggressive with you. As you play, the game learns your patterns. If you create armor, so will they. If you prefer to use a bow or a spear, they learn to duck and dodge and roll out of the way. The better your weapons, the better you play, they'll mirror and match it so that you always have a challenge. When I went to replay the game for some footage, my attackers learned to use sticks as weapons in the first 5 minutes. But who are these mystery attackers? There's a couple different types of enemies that make this game a horror. The easiest to dispatch seem to be feral human beings. Their bodies covered in dirt, they move erratically and hang close to the ground, often running on all fours like animals. I honestly pity these guys a little because they seem to just be rabid and starving. They have no organization and will feast on their fallen comrades before their bodies even go cold. The next step up are your standard cannibal. They more closely resemble human beings as we've come to expect them. They stand up. They use face paints and war paints, create armor, and build villages. They have some sort of an organized society with scouting and hunting parties and different roles and attackers. I neglect to use the word primal or barbaric, as any anthropology or archaeology major can tell you. There's no such thing as a basic or primal society. Human beings in a society, which we do live in, however foreign in concept to you, have as much complexity as any other society, no matter how barbaric they appear to be. It's worth wondering at this point in your game where the hell these people came from. It's indicated from the temperature, season, and the nature of the wildlife that the peninsula in which the game takes place is in North America. How did these people end up here? Have they evolved from the dawn of time? How has nobody contacted them? Or if they have, did they not return from that endeavor? Are tribes connected to one another, or are there rival tribes? What is the nature of their hierarchical structure, if they even have one? I'll try and turn off being a humanities student for even 1 second so that we can get back to the point. But you can start to see that if you want to take it all at face value, you can. But if you're curious about all these questions, the game provides you with the answers, as long as you're willing to look. By discovering the notes in the game, you learn that missionaries were among the first to arrive at the peninsula. It's difficult to tell exactly when, but it is likely over several hundred years ago. They leave notes and hundreds of ominous crosses all over the map. People must have arrived at different times over the years, including modern documentarians or filmmakers and hikers, all of which are nowhere to be found. Or are they? It can be assumed that the cannibals who attacked the player either killed the visitors to the island, or the visitors managed to integrate themselves into their society and became cannibals themselves. Which, to be honest, fair play on making the best of a bad situation. However, as you move through the game, and especially as you delve deeper into the caves, you come to understand that the cannibals are simply the warm-up to your horror bonanza. Lurking underneath the surface of the peninsula are creatures. Mutants, or creepy mutants as they're officially called. These things are fucking disgusting, very strong, and very scary to encounter in the darkness. Even the sounds they make are so unnerving, and you'll be on your toes the whole way through. After encountering them in the caves, on your second week they'll also start spawning overground. Great! In the forest, the cannibals and mutants appear to work together sometimes. Certain breeds of cannibals will be in scouting parties and will attack the player together. I cannot commend the creature design for these mutants enough. Each has a very specific concept and name. Armsy, a mass of flesh with 2 legs and a dozen arms that can spin around for multiple hits. Cowman, Huge, big-bellied and short-armed fellows who charge and slam on the player. Virginia is a creature with 6 legs and 6 malformed arms, as well as bare breasts and assumedly maybe 5 vaginas, even though I'm usually too busy screaming and running around to sit down and count them. The last mutants, for now, are babies, which is about as haunting as you can imagine. These guys can usually be heard before you see them, as they crawl squishily along the ground with their deformed bodies. They cry out and scream like regular human babies when they're murdered, which is, yeah. Babies will always spawn with a Virginia, though they can crawl away from her, so it's well implied that Virginias birthed them. When you've been playing a while, blue versions of Armsies and Virginias, which are a third stronger than their flesh-coloured counterparts, will spawn as well. You have to understand that these creatures are well designed, because before you know what's happening on this island, you may well believe that they evolved alongside the cannibals, that perhaps they were bred that way in some flagrant disregard for God's design, like pugs were. However, the earliest notes that the missionaries left imply they encountered fully formed Virginias themselves. The missionaries, unlike the cannibals that they will become, do not fuck with the mutants, as they board up the cave entrances and lace them with crosses. One may then wonder, why did the missionaries stay? There's plenty of the New World to go snatch from the indigenous population, so why stay in the only part of the continent where you're not the biggest monster around? The other note that is presumably written by the missionaries features a drawing of a giant sinkhole that the player will discover while exploring the map. Next to the sinkhole in the drawing is an image of Christ on a crucifix. Typical missionary stuff, right? The other notes and camcorder footage you find, both on the surface and in the caves, provide more mystique about what could be going on. On the south coast of the island, you find an abandoned yacht floating out in the ocean. The player can see the red man from the opening cutscene of the game descending into the yacht, as well as in other instances throughout the island, though I personally have never caught it, or if I did, I didn't realise it at the time. If you swim out to the yacht, avoiding the sharks, the red man will have disappeared. On the yacht, you will find a Polaroid image of a Virginia, a magazine about yachts, which seems a little self-indulgent to me, and milk cartons featuring missing children. There's also a door that you cannot open without a keycard. In a cave, we can find a short tape that we can play with a camcorder that features a young girl with an oxygen mask in a helicopter, titled Megan's Arrival. In the same cave, you may find another tape featuring the same girl in a wheelchair in some sort of cafe, titled Lunch with Megan. She gives a little wave, and the video is cut short. Back on the surface, in a grave on the beach, you find a Polaroid image of the yacht itself, captioned June 82. It can then be assumed that the yacht we saw arrived with a bunch of people in the 80s, and similar to the missionaries, they were looking for something, or at least had some reason to stay. Also on the beach, on the west side of the island, we find some abandoned shipping containers that appear to be each carrying a single circuit board in every box, but that's not important.
That's not important right now.
What's important is a cargo manifest note featuring a logo of some company named Sahara. I tried to read the manifest, trying in vain to discover why they were so wasteful in their packing techniques, but it's pretty illegible. I guess it's important that we know nobody in this Sahara place received their precious circuit boards. What a mystery. One mystery can be wrapped up when we find a magazine cover featuring none other than Timmy and his father, Eric LeBlanc. The tabloid states that our poor wife, Timmy's mother, has died, recently and tragically, recontextualizing the opening of the game. This isn't just a loving father. It's what's left of a family after the player character and his son have suffered an intense and awful loss, and essentially are all that they each have left. Not that we needed any more of an incentive than saving our child, though purveyors of the world's worst father achievement may beg to differ. We are a man who canonically has the skills to survive and has nothing left to lose. This red man's ass is grass. So, we make our way around the map, delving into the cave systems. These are very well designed and are exactly like cave systems in real life. Confusing and fucking terrifying. Seriously, I do not know how any person spelunks in real life, especially considering this map of missing people in North America compared to the North American cave systems. More story-important notes found in caves include what seem to be torn Bible pages with red writing over them, saying stuff like, "She's not dead, she is sleeping," and don't be afraid, just believe, and a jealous God punishes a parent's fault on their children. Another cave note is a strange drawing of some sort of statue or obelisk. In another cave, we find another tape, wherein this obelisk opens and is filled with spikes, a la Iron Maiden. It's in some sort of lab, surrounded by grown men and one child looking at it. This one is titled Opening the Artifact, and I breathe a sigh of relief that my archaeology degree was not in vain. It was all leading up to this. That being said, what is all this weirdly modern shit doing all the way down in a cave? It makes sense we'd find modern stuff on the surface, but who in their right mind was coming down here? Did the cannibals find these on the surface and drop them about the place by accident? We find 2 documents similarly out of place in 2 different caves. One is a restraining order filed by a Jessica Cross against Matthew Cross for protection against aggravated stalking and harassment. The document is dated June 12th and is from a family court in Pringle Township, British Columbia, Canada. I'm not sure if this is supposed to indicate that the game is taking place in Canada, but interestingly, there is a real Pringle Township in Canada, but it's in Ontario, several provinces away. Perhaps it's an Easter egg, some of the developers are from there, or maybe something I'm missing that a Canadian could explain. Either way, the court ruled that Matthew could not contact his wife or their only child. This has awful implications that unfortunately only get worse when we find another important story note in a different cave. An autopsy report for one and only Jessica Cross. Her body was examined on September 20th after she was discovered by her sister. She was murdered. She suffered multiple stab wounds and head trauma and died violently. Hauntingly, the description of her face is, quote, none, implying she was butchered beyond all recognition. Jesus. Wives and mothers are just getting it in this game. Deep in another cave is another tape that shows a child on some sort of hospital bed, thrashing around violently and painfully as 2 men watch. It's called Side Effects, and I'm not getting good vibes from this, as you may imagine. We have been through so many caves at this point that we must be running out of them. In one of the last caves, we find another Polaroid that depicts another cave entrance. Within this cave is a keycard. So, we fight our way out of the cave, trek down to the south of the map, go back to the yacht, avoid all the sharks, hop in and... Oh, it doesn't work? It's the wrong keycard. Then what the hell does this one open? Taking a better look at the thing, it's dirty, but you can just about make out the name Carl Thomas Peterson on it, as well as a company logo bearing the name of dun-da-da-da, Sahara. Remember? Like from the cargo manifest? Have you been paying attention? Let's take a breather and collect ourselves. This is all very interesting, but where the fuck is our son? Why did I think he'd been stashed in this little yacht room? What does any of this have to do with the mutant creatures running around? We decide to lock the fuck back in and find our child. I wasn't wrong about running out of caves. At this point in the game, there is but one cave that you haven't yet explored. If you've been diligent enough, you've also found the dead bodies of every single other passenger on this plane, having been gored by the locals. Your last cave is deeper and more dangerous than every other cave, so you get geared up with full armor and any weapons you've managed to find. The caves, much like cave systems in real life, go over and under and around each other, and in this case are actually all connected. You may not be able to go all the way through at first, as you'd need a rebreather and a climbing axe, as well as being an in-game survival expert because there are so many enemies. With this in mind, go down into the caves and go as deep as you possibly can, delving further and further in, knowing that you're on the right track because you keep finding segments of your poor son's robot toy and children's drawings, presumably by him. These drawings confirm that he is alive due to their subject matter. A cannibal holding a severed head, a picture of you and him smiling, holding hands with the robot toy and the plane in the background, the barricades with crosses I mentioned that the missionaries might have put up, some sort of pit with a pond, Timmy holding hands with the red man looking sad and with parts of his toy missing, and of the sinkhole. At first you may wonder why the red man took him on a tour of every cave in the area, but as I said, the caves overlap, so it is possible that they went one through route rather than in and out as the player usually does. You don't know where the red man led him, so you still have to go deeper underground, fighting your way through cannibals and mutants. At a deep point, you encounter 3 man-made doors. They look ancient, and to open them you use a weight-based pressure plate. What the hell? After your 3rd pressure plate door, you eventually emerge outside again. You realize at this point that you are at the very bottom of the sinkhole at the center of the map. What the hell is going on down here? There's mutants and a crashed helicopter with a machete inside. Perhaps this is the helicopter that we saw in the tape, though we already know Megan did not crash land here, as we saw her in a cafeteria. Unless that's not chronological? There is seemingly nowhere to go, until you notice a small pond may be a lot deeper than you thought. Again, you know for sure that Timmy has been here because he drew this pit already. You'll need your rebreather to continue, but you've likely used it many times at this point. Brace yourself and dive even deeper into the bowels.
Yes, further into the bowels.
You swim for ages. You resurface in a space that you affectionately dub Hell Cave on your map. It's a large cavern with plenty of bad guys in it, but you notice that weirdly there seems to be some kind of construction, like the cave isn't all natural. You find again confirmation that Timmy was here, a drawing of him wearing a rebreather and swimming, and please no, stop, I can't, look at the little fishies, my poor baby. You're almost there though. He can't be too far, right? You follow a long stretch of corridor that again has been constructed by people. What in the actual fuck is going on here? The cannibals and mutants up top have tents and structures, yes, but they hardly have mining gear and torches and whatever else you need to do something like this. We find a Polaroid, labelled keycard, pointing to where we found the keycard. Like, yeah, old news. This is clearly, though, a clue that whoever hasn't found the keycard yet may need to go and find it before returning. Another tape means we're one step closer to understanding what's going on. It's labelled Armsy Breakout. In it, we see some sort of ward with containment cells and many men running around. At this point, I have to mention that the way these men are dressed in this tape and the cafeteria tape give me a really strong Cabin in the Woods vibes. If you've seen that movie, you know the facility I'm talking about, and maybe you can see what I mean. It's an excellent movie. Anyway, in the tape, we hear the sounds that we have come to recognize easily as a mutant Armsy, which breaks out of a containment cell and flattens the men. As the camera turns to run, we see poor Megan Cross in her wheelchair. The Armsy powers past. We hear Megan scream, and the tape ends on the wheelchair lying on its side on the floor, Megan's lifeless body and the noises of the mutant wreaking havoc off camera. Jeez. We've only come to learn of Megan through the barest notes and pictures, but anyone could empathize with a sick child meeting such a miserable end. You continue down this long cave corridor, with big stone supports similar looking to that of a mine shaft. At the end of the corridor, you come to a giant mechanical door. You find this strange drawing. You swipe your keycard. It opens. I cannot tell you how jaw-dropping this reveal was the first time I played this game. It was pure magic. Sure, I was probably a few beers in at that stage and riled up from loving the game for so long, but no matter what I could have parsed, I did not expect this. My brother had played the game longer than me, but had never made it down here, and equally his gob was smacked. Please understand, if you haven't played the game itself, which I told you to do, were you not paying attention? There is no way you picked up all the story items leading up to this and had them laid out like I did for you in this video. I mean, maybe you did, and you're just a god of gaming, but I didn't get all of them until I achievement hunted them a few years ago. When you're playing this game for the first time and have no idea where this story is going, or just haven't been paying close enough attention to your clues, this reveal is just so good. You realize all at once that these individual puzzle pieces are fitting together into something much larger than you ever could have realized. I played this game in 2021 for the first time, so most people I assume had already completed it. I'm not big into Reddit or the Steam community page, so I literally had no idea what I was walking into. When writing the script for this video, I looked up a load of Let's Plays from 7 years ago when the game was released to prove that me and my brother were not alone in our shock at this reveal.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
What the fuck?
Oh no, that's too...
What? What the hell is this? This game just took a really weird turn.
I don't know.
My wife-
We are in a facility. Like, this is supposed to be just an island full of cannibals. What in the world is going on? I have no idea.
Well, with nowhere else to go, you start down this creepy fucking red corridor. The 180 switch up after hours and hours of gameplay in this realistic survival style to this hyper-modern facility leaves you wondering, what the fuck is this place? The corridor is blocked, so you climb up onto a maintenance shaft or whatever this thing is. You walk along before dropping back down onto the main floor and find an alcove with a printed email of Megan Cross. And we can put together that the child mentioned in the restraining order from earlier is the same child featured in the recordings we found, with her picture confirming it. Jessica emailed Megan's school photo to Matthew, a courtesy I would not have extended, and warned him not to contact them again. I couldn't quite make out the date, but another note on the floor shows his reply. "If you divorce me, you will regret it," implying that this is just before the restraining order. Perhaps these printouts were used in the court case? It certainly implies that Matthew either killed her or hired someone to. It's really horrible seeing this, considering we know what happens to poor Jessica, but Megan and Jessica are not our concern. Our son is. As we move through the utility room back into the maintenance shaft, we find a small hideout that a child was using. And guys, stop. I know I'm a sap, but thinking about our poor baby holed up in here trying to survive breaks my heart. We move through the maintenance shaft again. I've been led to believe from movies and TV that every American building is like 90% vents and maintenance shafts, so I suppose this makes sense. We drop down into the cafeteria, presumably the one from our tape earlier. What's a fun detail in this room are the vending machines you can use to buy snacks and drinks, and an achievement, using the cash you've been using to start fires this whole time. There's also a bunch of meals left open on the tables, which do not hurt the player when eaten and therefore are not rotten, indicating that the breakout and subsequent evacuation of this facility happened really recently. You crawl back up into another vent and crawl through, dropping down into a children's ward. I cannot tell you how much my stomach dropped at this. It is so bleak. There's kid-sized beds everywhere, with toys and magazines. One featuring the ironic title, Ethical Scientist, as if there's any ethical reason to be housing sick children at a secret facility underground in a cannibal-infested island. The magazine shows another image of the obelisk, asking, "Can this device bring back the dead?" We move from the ward to the corridor as seen in the breakout tape. What once were thought to be containment units for the mutants turn out to be observation rooms for the children. You could rush through this whole game and never pick up on just how nefarious this all is. Every observation room has child-sized beds, posters, and colourful bed sheets against the bleak grey walls. Perhaps there are other wings of this facility that feature adult wards, but we don't get to see them. We only see these. In one room, we see dolls set up with one lying in a bed, with others observing them. I can't imagine what it was like for these children, holed up in here for God knows how long with no light, poked and prodded by strange men. Seeing as we saw a mutant break out of one of these units, it's not hard to imagine what was being done to these poor kids. This ward and endgame segment is really what elevates the horror in this game to the extreme. Sure, we had to survive in the wilderness with increasingly scary attackers, but we were still us. We were in control of ourselves, our actions, and how we responded to what was done to us. These children were alone and helpless, the fodder of some insidious experiments by some powerful corporation. Observation Room H has to be my least favorite because of, well, this. When first playing the game, I didn't think too hard about the mutants or their origins. I figured they were awesome creatures for this feature that made the caves especially scary, but that was about it. Knowing that they were once human beings, no less children, is so much more horrific than anything I could have imagined. I mean, just look at this fucking thing. I despise body horror despite being a horror maniac because of this concept of having someone do something to your body to twist it beyond recognition. These horrors remind me of the imagery in the 2006 book All Tomorrows by C.M. Kozeman, where humans evolve both by natural means and that of genetic evolution by a superior alien race, forcing them into various forms as punishment, and then leaving them to their suffering. I've only heard clips of it being read out, but its imagery is scarring, and perhaps another inspiration between this horrible monster design. So, you've managed to get through the observation rooms. Congratulations! As a reward, you get to crawl up another maintenance shaft. As you go up, you find an empty box of crayons belonging to Megan Cross. Where are the crayons? Is this how Timmy made his drawings? Did the Red Man give them to him? In the shaft, we also find drawings by Megan on the wall. When did she draw these? Was she the one in the hideout from before and not Timmy? How many children were in this facility and how many of them made it out? Dropping back down again, we're in the offices or research space of the facility. There's drawings of the obelisk, of crosses, and calculations written everywhere. There's a projector with a slideshow with some lovely lore for us. The presentation is titled Longevity Medicine Through the Jarius Project and was presented by our famous femicidal maniac Matthew Cross. Jarius is a figure in the Bible and thus connects the Christian elements in the game, such as the missionaries, and oh my god, I just now made the connection that Matthew, Jessica, and Megan's last name is Cross. Only just now I copped that. Jesus, a decade on and this game still has more to surprise me with. Anyway, in the Bible, a Jewish man named Jarius has a young daughter who was dying. He begged Jesus to come to his house and heal her, and Jesus agrees to do so, but stops on his way to heal someone else. In the meantime, the girl dies. When Jesus arrived at the house, he told the mourners that the little girl was not dead, but just sleeping. Sound familiar? Everyone laughed at Jesus, but were then shown up when Jesus raised Jarius' daughter from the dead. Okay. There's a lot to unpack there, but let's put a pin in that for now because we're still on the first damn slide of the presentation. The next slide showcases Subject 37B5, the Virginia, age 12. Jesus. It comments on her multiple sex organs and notes that her multiple limbs might be a sibling anomaly, indicating not only were the children morphed themselves, but they were cross-morphed with each other. Ethical scientist my ass. Next is Subject 82C6, Armsy, age 6? Come on. Again, we face the sibling anomaly line that makes me want to throw up. Now you may be thinking, baby, you're being super harsh. Judging by the fact that Megan was sick when she arrived at the facility, this is clearly some godly attempt to save the lives of sick and dying children, just like Jesus did. However, a sentence on the next slide reading, translating results to adult longevity, reads to me that the higher-ups at this company likely had larger, more selfish reasons for this project. The final slide has the sad line, parents willing to spend money. And again, my interpretation of this is that we are hoodwinking parents desperate to save their sick kids, using their money to transform their kids into monsters. Also that the rich higher-ups in the company can give themselves longer lives. I'm sure healing the children by isolating the long life gene from the turns you into a massive disgusting insult against God gene, and therefore ensuring the children's adult longevity. But something about this place is so insidious, it makes me fear the worst. Additionally, if you remember the yacht from ages ago, it features many missing children posters. When I wondered what could possibly keep someone on the island, their plight mirrors our own. Somebody stole their children, so this is not a facility to which we give the benefit of the doubt. While we're still reeling from all of that, we continue into the next few rooms. We find a dirty email from Sahara to Matthew Cross, firing him for, quote, unethical and inappropriate use of company equipment. Whatever that means in this context. I mean, really. How much more unethical can you get when you have a secret, massive facility that experiments on children? I again couldn't see any date on the email, if it was before or after Matthew's divorce and his wife's murder, so the exact timeline of his crash out is unclear to me. We find in these offices a scientist who hanged himself. His body has barely decomposed, again indicating that it hasn't been that long since it all kicked off down here. Though it appears the scientist barricaded himself inside. Maybe he holed down there for a while, but his coat and his clothes aren't that dirty, so it doesn't seem like he'd been scrounging around to survive that long. Let's keep moving and try to ignore the insane mounting dread building up in my stomach. As if kids aren't bad enough, we find a number of incubators typically used for premature babies. I should know, my older brother was in one and he looked like a gremlin, God bless him. There's more babies in this part of the room, and it looks like they were experimenting on babies too, which is just great. Finally, we make it to the famous obelisk, which stands in the center of a dark room. It's connected to modern machinery and a hospital bed, and there's a sign that indicates there is another artifact, not the obelisk, in the facility. There's another incubation room, but what draws our attention is a small office to the left, with the body of the Red Man. He has been murdered, stabbed through the face and neck with crayons. Those same missing crayons from Megan's pack. On a whiteboard behind him reads, "Daddy's dead." Okay, so we can assume that the Red Man is Megan's father and that she killed him. Didn't we witness Megan's death in that video recorder? Wasn't this Red Man, aka Matthew Cross, supposed to be our big bad evil guy? How did a little girl drive crayons with such force as to puncture a skull and overpower and kill a grown man? His murder with his face lacerated echoes that of his ex-wife's death. Perhaps Megan knew the monster that her father truly was. We find him near an email that notes the power of the as of yet unseen second artifact, that it has the capacity to bring down a plane. The pieces are starting to fit together. We go back into the main room and remember that the obelisk supposedly has the capacity to bring people back from the dead. We approach it, that mounting dread I mentioned creeping its way from my stomach to my throat, as we open the obelisk and find what we've been searching for all along. Our poor, small, helpless son is dead inside this horrible Iron Maiden contraption. He's been impaled on those spikes, scarring up his face. We lift him out carefully and lay him on the bed, folding into his hands his beloved toy that we painstakingly found and put back together. As we take a second to mourn, we remember that this facility was cleared out not long ago. The lights, ventilation are still working, and the machine itself is still working. Parsing from the images on the machine, we realize that it can still be used. Connecting the wires to our son's lifeless corpse, the obelisk opens. It seems that the scientists had realized that this obelisk couldn't produce life out of nothing. It required a sacrifice. Such is the law of conservation of energy, life could not be created out of nothing, but channeled from someone else. Let me remind you now of the sibling anomaly line, implying that the researchers were sacrificing one sibling for the life of another. Megan Cross had died during the outbreak at the facility and stayed dead for an unknown amount of time. Her father had used the second artifact to crash our plane with the express purpose of stealing Timmy and killing him to bring his own daughter back from the dead. Matthew must have fancied himself some sort of Jesus character, as paintings of the Red Man deified in the caves indicate he was developing some sort of grandiose sense of self. There are other theories that in his quest to find a viable child, he was feeding all of the other passengers to the cannibals. When you don red paint like he wears, The cannibals are much more fearful and respectful, indicating some sort of understanding or partnership. Looking at his corpse in the office, I can't help but feel like he got what he fucking deserved. Leading from his body is a trail of bloody, child-sized footprints further into the facility. Megan woke from death, saw what her father had done, killed him, and is still alive somewhere in here. Timmy's life had been traded for hers, but this time there would be take-backsies. With grim determination, we follow the footprints. We find another of Megan's drawings depicting him as a monster. We reach a large atrium, crossing it and seeing a little kid at the far end. As you approach, she plays with a small airplane toy. Mimics it crashing, and then points to you, indicating that somehow she knows that's where you came from. Then she starts to thrash like we saw on the tapes. She struggles, a huge mutant appendage sprouting from her mouth and extending outwards. Her body mutates, forming the giant endgame boss, with what's left of her hanging helplessly in the center. It's a difficult enough fight in single player, but I think if you're downed in return, her health is not restored, so she can be dispatched relatively easily. Once defeated, her mutant appendages fall away, and we pick up her small, lifeless body. We carry her back to the obelisk and place her into the machine. Only for her small form to flop pathetically back out as a red, live sample required is displayed on the screen. We despair for a moment before seeing a second golden keycard has fallen from her body. This unlocks the door leading to the second artifact. With the real horror of the sunk cost fallacy, we continue further into this hellish facility. The corridor is blown out, so we find ourselves back in a cave system with another ancient door. These ancient doors imply to me that the obelisk has been the center of previous societies or groups of people that tried to harness the artifact's power. We see what's left of them scattered around the caverns, their skeletons knelt in reverent prayer and cowering horror. The hole in the center of the cavern implies that the sinkhole goes even further down into the earth than we could have imagined. Did the artifact do this? Is it some sort of cosmic object that crash-landed here and changed the landscape forever? Further in, we find more offices with even more gored and disintegrated bodies. Finally, we reach an elevator. That takes us to the offices at the peak of the mountain, overlooking the landscape we've spent days to weeks surviving. A massive office with a second artifact is at the very top. On the desk at the far end of the room, we see a computer that indicates there is a plane entering the airspace, with the computer reading that there are 3 viable samples on the plane. How long has this been going on? How long have we fed shelter cats to coyotes and stolen people's children? The computer wants to know if it should activate the artifact. In the corner, there is a shutdown switch to turn the whole thing off. A choice must be made. Will we finish what we came here to do? Will we sacrifice the lives of everyone on that plane? Only the lucky ones will die in the crash. The rest will be kidnapped, mutilated, eaten. They'll vanish from the lives of their loved ones with nothing to show for it, not to mention the 3 children that are on board. We even saw what happened when Timmy's life was traded, the monstrosity that was born from Megan's body. We have no idea if it will happen again, or indeed how many times it has happened before. Or will we shut it down? Will we end this horrific cycle of violence and the bloodshed of God knows how many children, thereby sacrificing the last thing on earth that we love, and sacrificing ourselves as we have no viable way off of this island? We do it. A year later, we are the guests on a celebrity talk show. Timmy is alive, his face scarred and twitching. We have successfully monetized our trauma with a book detailing our experience. I have to wonder if it includes what it cost to get back home. The talk show host asks us to demonstrate chopping down a tree with our trusty modern axe. But before we can, Timmy falls to the ground, thrashing violently. As we hold him, he goes limp, but he isn't dead. He opens his eyes again, and the game ends. Or does it? I have to say, at this point when we first completed the story, my nerves were fully shot. I believe Timmy didn't mutate the same way Megan did, because Megan was already sick, and Timmy, apart from being dead for that unknown stretch, was healthy. However, we get a sneak peek of what is to come in the after credits scene. Our eyes open, again in first-person perspective, as we step out of the shower and get dressed. We look up, revealing that we are an older Timmy with a recognizable scar, living in a small studio apartment. We are coping as well as can be expected, with a huge cross over our bed and a Pepe Sylvia type decor. The walls are littered with pages, the largest of which is labeled Site 2. We pick up a bottle of whiskey, indicating again how to cope with trauma, but our arms start shaking as masses bulge and bubble underneath our skin, and we look out over an unsuspecting city. And scene. I can't quite describe to you the feeling of this game and its twists and turns. It's this wealth of storytelling that, again, can be completely ignored, and it's still an entertaining game. I spent this time telling you how good this story is to show how much I loved it. Hopefully you got an idea of this throughout the video. There's so much more here that I couldn't even cover, so please, again, go play this game. Digest this game, same as I did. Because next up is the sequel, Sons of the Forest, and given how much I loved the first game, it would be easy for fans like myself to be skeptical or scared that its sequel wouldn't live up to high standards for a game that rocked my world. Now that we know the depth to which these storytellers are willing to go in their seemingly simple game, how could it possibly be topped? The answer, my friends, is the perfect fucking sequel. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. I hope you enjoyed this summary of the story and themes, and I hope you'll join me in my next video about the highly contested sequel, Sons of the Forest. Thank you for watching.